Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Hello, I am Eric.
And I'm Kevin.
And this is 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger, the podcast where we take a long, hard look at some of our favorite action movies from the era of Arnold.
Schwarzenegger is the icon of the genre, and we're taking a deep dive into some of these 80s and 90s cult action movies and breaking them all the way down.
We're back. We're back for episode 2 of Iron Eagle.
Thank you for doing this with me, Eric.
Man, it was so much fun to watch this movie. I hadn't seen it. I mean, it was not what I remembered it being, as we discussed, but
I don't know that this is actually even technically an action movie in my mind.
Yeah,
it doesn't have the gratuitous nudity. It doesn't have a lot of bad language and a lot of, I guess there's a lot of deaths towards the end.
Yeah.
But like not a lot of gratuitous violence.
No, and all the deaths are bad guys, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's almost no good guys.
And it's
die.
not like necessarily like the glorified killing, like glorified violence.
Yeah.
That's what I associate with like true action movies.
Yeah.
Are like celebrate. You want to celebrate the violence.
It's not Rambo kind of violence. Yeah.
Well, what are you drinking, man?
So I am drinking a brand of soju, Jinro. This is peach flavor.
Oh.
It is quite tasty. I love soju.
Yeah,
myself.
you got the little like Korean liquor store near you, don't you?
Yeah. I live in a part of the city where there's a very strong Korean population, and it means you get all of like the amazing Korean barbecue and Korean booze and all the good stuff.
That's cool. Well, I am sipping on a little New Riff single barrel bourbon. New Riff, new to the state of Georgia. It's so fucking good, man.
Yeah.
I had, I think John, podcast fame, former co-host of 6 Degrees. He at some point brought a bottle back from Kentucky or Tennessee or something like that. And then he and I went up there a couple of years ago to Kentucky, and I bought a bottle and brought it back. It's so good.
Yeah.
But it wasn't available here in Georgia, but it's in Georgia now. So
and this
if you're
is
listening to us in Georgia,
thing?
yeah, they've only been in Georgia, like distributed in Georgia for the last few months.
Oh, wow.
So if you're one of our Georgia listeners and you like bourbon, go check out New Riff. It's so good. Like, I'd put it up against anything that you might have to.
There's some good
search high and low
here
to try to find.
Yeah.
Like this compares to. I compare to Colonel Taylor. If you like Colonel Taylor bourbon, you probably like New Riff, and it's easier to find in half the price.
Yeah. I mean, he had me at half the price, frankly.
So, we're back on our Iron Eagle shit episode 2.
Yep.
I'll try to run us through the plot.
Please
I guess.
Please do, because
not too much has happened, honestly. But we got in the beginning we saw an unidentified. Well, no, he wasn't unidentified. He identified himself. So we had Colonel Masters got shot down. It seemed like in enemy territory somewhere in the Middle East. Okay, and then we got an Air Force base back in America where his son Doug Masters is like living the high school dream, I guess. He's about to graduate. He wants to go to the Air Force Academy, follow in Dad's footsteps. He's just been notified that he got rejected from the Air Force Academy. He does a crazy ass sort of daredevil like race against another teen or maybe grown ass man. We're not really sure.
But that's not clear.
But we see that basically Doug's a little hotshot pilot. He wins the race, obviously. And then he gets informed by his friend that his dad's been shot down.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at.
Yeah, so we're back. And we cut to back at the Air Force Base now.
Yes.
And Doug and his mom are sitting around waiting to hear any information about what has happened to his dad. And Doug is tired of sitting around, and he barges past security into a restricted area to meet Colonel Blackburn.
I thought, like, for an area he's not allowed in, he really seemed to know his way around.
He really did. And no one really made a lot of effort to stop him.
Yeah,
either.
no, I feel like that's also a pre 9/11 world.
Oh, definitely.
I feel like if you barged into a military base now, you're probably going to get shot within 20 feet. You know, yeah.
So he enters this command center, which is like straight up 80s high tech, complete with the weird red carpet, and all of the equipment is like slanted at 45-degree angles, and not at all what I imagine an actual command center would look like on a
Yeah.
military base.
It's hard to know, I guess.
But we were talking about all of the disjointed sort of memories that I had about this movie. That set has been with me.
One of the few things you remember?
One of the few things that I remember.
There's only like 2 scenes in that.
I know,
that set.
but I just think the way, I don't know what it is about me.
Okay.
It is so unreal. It is so like ridiculous, but I also think it is so cool. I love the way that whole command center looks.
Okay.
Regardless of how faithful it is to reality. I wanted them to spend more of the movie in this completely hysterically unrealistic location. It stuck with me all of these years, and so when I'm watching it, I'm like,
that's awesome.
I'm not remembering any of this movie, and then we get to the set, and I'm like, oh, I remember this.
That's so
It's
awesome.
so weird.
It's weird the things that stick with us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Doug enters the command center, grabs him very, very roughly, but then Colonel Blackburn emerges from his wherever he was and says, "Oh, okay, let him go. Let him go. This is a special circumstance. It's like we're going to let it slide."
On one hand, I do feel like the colonel can order this security guy what to do, but I also don't think that the colonel can or would be able to just permit Doug to be in here.
Right.
Like, regardless of what's going on with his
Right,
dad. Like,
exactly.
That's okay. He can be in this, like, there's classified shit happening all around the area. He can be here. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, you don't have you don't, if you're a real military guy, which someone who's probably risen as high as this guy has, is like, takes the shit seriously. He's not just like, no, we can bend the rules for this kid.
Exceptions are not being made.
No
It doesn't
matter what's going on. Yeah.
Nope, not at all. So the guard lets him go, and then Doug complains to Blackburn that no one is giving up information about what's going on with his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, like this is still developing. I mean, I wouldn't imagine that you would know that much right now. But he's like, look, all we know is that he was shot down over the Mediterranean, which is like, okay, we kind of get a vague sense of where this is all occurring now, right? And
Yeah.
we assume it's the eastern coastline of the Mediterranean, given the accents, the vague accents of the villainous pilots at the beginning of the movie.
Well, he took him over to that map.
Right.
And I looked, and the map was like North Africa.
Right. Which is, I guess, like most of the Mediterranean southern coastline would be North Africa.
I looked at it. I was like, it seemed like the map, which is presumably highly classified information that he's showing him. Because it was like a diagram of like, it looked like the routes that the various planes took during the dogfight.
Right, exactly.
Or something. But looking at the map, it seemed like that the unidentified evil country would have probably been Libya, which is like Muammar Gaddafi, back then. So I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense as far as like they were a boogeyman, back in the 80s for sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, I guess it's Libya.
And I love this line so Doug, Colonel Blackburn tells Doug that his dad was flying freedom of navigation exercises, which just seems like absolutely like military speak for Black Ops. Like he was absolutely doing some sort of Black Ops mission. There's no question about it. I didn't never
Google that. I assumed it was on the level. He was like saying, well, it's just like we're keeping, what did he say? It's establishing international airspace boundaries. And like, maybe it's like if we're not here, because I feel like that shit happens where you always get like these Russian planes flying too close to our airspace or American planes.
Yeah.
Like Russia says we're flying too close to their
we
coastline.
do hear about that.
But I think it is like to try to sort of like establish, and like China's, always trying to expand. And it's like, I feel like it is a thing where like, no, we just have to fly here every once in a while to show this is still international airspace. So you can't just claim it.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And maybe I assumed that was probably a real thing.
I guess maybe I am so jaded by our 21st century politics that I just assumed that America was actually the bad guy here. That they were clearly actually violating this sovereign nation's airspace and they're just trying to make some claim. But no. The movie goes out of its way to really portray this mysterious country as the bad guy.
Yeah.
Because Colonel Blackburn says, they were flying 200 miles off of their coast when international treaty says that they only have claim over 12 miles.
Yeah.
And that is such a huge difference. Like, it's ridiculous to me.
I did Google that, and 12 miles is like the international standard for like
the international
how
standard.
far off your coastline that you have exclusive control over the airspace.
But they would still be as like in breach of international treaties if they were flying 24 miles.
Yeah, right.
But the movie just really wanted to make the emphasis that
we got to be clear.
100 miles.
So the standard of 12 miles offshore that was established by like a global treaty in the year 1919.
Wow, shortly after World War I.
I feel like flying was sort of new at that point, that they were already like, all right, well, we got to establish how much airspace does a country have. I'm like, that's pretty wild. But yeah, 12 miles. I feel like 12 miles of flying distance in 1919 was a long way.
I mean,
like,
what is it? Like most commercial airplanes can fly at 500 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Like 12 miles,
12 miles is very little.
You miss it.
And like now, that was like, the 12 miles was established before planes had missiles and stuff like that, but still. But the 12 miles is like
that's a real number,
an accurate number. So I feel
this
like
movie is so weird to me because every once in a while it goes into fantasy land because of the nature of what it is, the teen power fantasy and all that kind of stuff. But then it's like weirdly accurate sometimes. Where it's like, okay, it's not clear to me. Did the people writing this movie actually understand military operations?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or, I mean, like it never settles for me. I never could figure it out.
I feel like you have to have some sort of like, technical advisor.
Yeah.
A person who goes through and makes sure that it adds up a little bit.
Right.
That it's partially right.
It does it just enough that multiple times throughout the course of the movie, I'm like, okay, that's ridiculous. And then they actually acknowledge that it's ridiculous, but here's why it's okay. Like they do that multiple times in the course of the movie. Anyway, Blackburn says that they caught his dad and his wingman, unfortunately with their pants down. And hey, though, like Colonel Masters shot down 3 planes before he had to bail out over their territory. It's right at this moment, because movies are always, the timing is perfect in movies. An underling approaches and tells Blackburn that the request for an aircraft carrier to be deployed to assist the recovery of Doug's dad was flatly denied, just completely denied. And Blackburn gets pissed off and demands that he gets Admiral What's His Nuts on the phone.
I thought that was a great line.
Which is great.
I feel like the dude playing Blackburn, like he felt like an authentic military man to me.
Like an Arlie Ermy type where he was in the military.
Yeah.
And then
he had that feel of a real guy. Yeah.
So he tells Blackburn tells Doug that he doesn't like the way the State Department is handling the situation. He
made that terrible poker analogy. You're a poker player, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course.
Where he's like, we're holding all the cards, he says, and they're acting like all we got is a pair of 2s waiting on a face card.
Right.
And I'm like, that's not a thing.
No, it's if you know what he's holding, then you're
not just waiting on a random face card.
No, you're not waiting on a random face card.
A face card's not going to improve a pair of 2s.
No, it's not. If you've got a pair of 2s,
unless you got like a pair of 2s and you're holding some other face cards,
also,
and you're
what game is he playing? Like 5-card stud, 7-card stud, Hold'em, Omaha. Like I don't know, what is he playing?
It didn't make any sense. It was a terrible analogy. It stuck in my craw.
It was just like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But fine, movie. We're just gonna go with it. He tells Doug that he doesn't like the way the State Department's handling the situation, and he says they want to negotiate rather than demand that make a demand of the threat of using force, right?
Yes.
And then this is where the movie gets kind of bogged down in the early parts of Act 2 with international diplomacy.
Right.
It's really weird how much time this movie spends on the nature of foreign policy. So Blackburn says that this evil generic country is holding a sham trial and is accusing Colonel Masters of violating their sovereign airspace.
Yeah.
He says that the U.S. has had a trade embargo with this country for years, and they're trying to use Doug's dad as a bargaining chip to force the U.S. to lift the trade embargo.
Which U.S. did have a trade embargo with Libya in 1986. I Googled that.
Yeah. So this is definitely drawing from contemporary politics at the time, but I don't know how a pilot flying in contested waters is going to be like, that's going to be the linchpin that the United States is going to hang their embargo on.
Yes.
So anyway, I got really navel gazy about the way that they handle foreign policy in this movie. It was very strange. So Blackburn says that the bad guys, they haven't asked for anything yet, but they're hoping to hear something. They're hoping to hear some of the demands soon.
Right.
The underling, Blackburn's underling, ultimately calls out, says he's got Admiral What's His Nuts on the phone. He's like, oh shit, did I say that out loud? He did, but that would have been hilarious. And Blackbird says, hey, you got to get out of here, but listen, kid, hang in there. And so Doug leaves. So Doug and his mom are walking out of the building later on, or they're heading down a hallway heading towards the exit of the building.
Yeah,
and his mom starts reminiscing about the other time that Doug's dad had to ditch over the Pacific Ocean and was like missing for a while. And that's got to be actual. I mean, I have friends who are veterans, and I have talked to their wives about when they were on tours, and I can't imagine living with that kind of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that is just, it blows my mind that how you manage that. So like in this moment, like it was kind of a real moment. Like I get that because Doug's like, how can you be so calm about this? And she's talking about this other time that it happens. And it speaks to that ability of human beings to normalize situations that you should not be normalized.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy.
It actually was kind of it was an interesting scene. Like they don't really do a lot with Doug's mom. Like she's only in one or two more scenes, but she was a really believable character in this movie.
Yeah, she gives a good performance, especially in some later scenes that she's in. Yeah,
exactly.
I liked her.
Yeah. So Doug tells his mom that he needs to call Katie and let her know that he's going to miss the dance. And that, we need to tell the family friends that they shouldn't bother coming for graduation. And she's like, no. You need to do all these things. This is what Dad would want. I'm like, that was maybe one of the most truest moments of the whole movie, right?
Yeah.
Doug was like, I can't deal with this. Everything is falling to shit. We're going to cancel it. And his mom's like, no, the right thing to do is stay the course. It was a really strong
her explanation
scene.
Made sense. She's like, your dad's, he's over there and this is what he's thinking about is that you're, living, like having all these great moments or whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like the last thing that he wants is for you to stop living your life because of a situation that he's in. It was a strong moment. I mean, I really enjoyed that moment of the movie.
She said some shit like, he's thinking about you and Katie getting all dressed up for the dance tonight. And you plowing her.
Right. That was sort of the unspoken
motorboating her and all that shit, It's like, look, if you don't go nail Katie tonight, then the terrorists win. You know what I mean?
Truth.
Like we can't let that happen. But no, but I do agree with the sentiment. That's what is keeping him going over there is thinking about you you're living your life and all that. So don't.
Yeah.
If you take it away from him, like, then what's he got?
Right. And she says, like, look, I'm scared. Like, she's not going to lie about this, but thinking about the worst isn't going to make the situation better. And
also true.
Yeah. And it's like, it was a strong scene, right?
Yeah.
So they finally get out of the building, and Tony and Reg and Milo and their kid brother are waiting outside. And the younger brother runs over. Doug reassures him that everything is going to be fine. And then the mom takes the younger brother away, and Doug goes and hangs out with his friends.
That van they had was sweet. It was like almost like a VW, like a microbus or something like that.
Yeah.
But there was some weird shit going on inside. Like there was it looked like a cabinet, almost like a piece of furniture inside the van with a boombox on top and like blasted music.
I totally missed that.
I'm like, what's happening to that van? They got furniture in there.
So you've got a little bit of an advantage on me because you've seen this movie way more than me.
I was watching it and like dissecting the frames. Yeah, for sure.
So Milo asks what Blackburn said, and Doug says that they think his dad is being held for ransom. And he asks if Milo can snoop around his dad's office because, of course, his dad's in the Air Force as well. Like all these kids.
Yeah, all the Eagles are like military brats.
They're all military brats. And it's like, listen, if you can like snoop on your dad and see if you can get an update from him.
I feel like Milo gets sort of like used.
He does
by the cooler Eagles.
Right. Like the way he gets in with the cooler egos is by being useful for something.
He's like, we're gonna all go to the dance and fuck chicks.
you go snoop on your dad.
Go eavesdrop on your dad.
Yeah, that's what you're good for, Milo.
Yeah, right.
But Milo says that the entire intelligence division is scrambling and trying to keep it quiet. But he says he'll go and he's going to try to see what he can find out.
Yeah.
So Tony and Reggie, they figure out that Doug, they figure out that Doug doesn't want to go to the dance. And, I think we can all relate to that. Sitting at home and stewing, it has never solved problems for anybody.
Right.
Anyway, so Tony and Reggie offer some encouragement that everything's going to work out. Reggie
says, she got real political.
Yeah,
Do you remember that?
Talking like that last guy didn't do anything, but we got the new guy who's a ray gun or what? I don't remember the exact line.
What did he say? It was like because Doug said something about like he made a reference to like the Iran hostages,
That's right.
which was a real thing.
Which was a Carter thing.
And he's like, no, that's different. He's like, Mr. Peanut was in charge.
That's
then.
right.
He's like, now we got this new guy that don't take any shit from any gimpy little countries. He's like, they call him Ronnie Reagan.
Ronnie Reagan, that was the line. I'm like, whoa, movie! All of a sudden,
they had definitely a point of view politically.
Oh yeah, there's no question
This was
about
definitely like
that.
a right wing sort of jingoistic movie.
In '86 too, it would have been like Reagan's second term.
I mean, that was like peak Cold War.
Yeah.
Like Red Dawn type times, like Soviets and the generic baddies overseas or whatever.
But I mean, his Carter, that is, the way he responded to the Iran hostage crisis was one of the reasons he lost the election.
Yeah,
because he like in the eyes of the voter, he appeared weak on foreign powers, right?
Yeah.
And when Reagan came onto the scene, it was like, no, dog, we're going to take these motherfuckers down because we're the most powerful nation in the country.
Right.
That kind of attitude like swayed voters big time. Oh
yeah.
Right. And by this point in '86, like Reagan could do no wrong.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was
Reagan's America for sure. Like in '86.
So it was such an easy political statement to make too.
Yeah.
It's like why. Anyway, whatever. That's a whole other podcast we can talk about. So Reggie says that he got him some boutonnieres for the dance and like brings up a red flower, which is obviously like no one ever is going to think that this is a real. You can even see his hand.
He's like, go on, take a sniff.
Go and take a sniff. Go and take a sniff. Then squirts him in the face with obviously squirts him in the face with a flower. Sadly, it wasn't acid. It was just water.
See, I feel like these young actors made that moment work.
Really?
Though, because they played it, for me, they played it like, this is so stupid that it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, instead of, because I have no doubt also that the screenwriters probably were like, took this as, this is going to be a very, like a sincere joke.
Yeah.
And I think the kids played it like, you fucking, I can't believe you, like, are... this is this stupid.
Look,
that's how I read it.
I'm 25 playing an 18-year-old, and even I know how ridiculous this is. And then so we cut to one of the many weirdly tonal shifts between scenes in this movie, and we're at a prayer tower in said anonymous country, hearing the morning prayers. And it's like, okay, it is clear we don't know what country this is, but it is a Muslim country. Like they were really explicit about that.
Wait, the trial is happening, and I'm like, they would not be doing the trial during prayer time.
During prayer time. That is not a thing that would happen. Under no circumstances would they be doing this at that point in time.
But we had to just establish these are Islamic people.
These are the bad guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because exactly. I mean, it was so clear in that moment.
They pray different than us.
That's exactly right.
So that's how you know they're bad.
So, so Masters is on trial, and he says like this is such a fraud trial, and he's completely innocent of any of the crimes that he's been accused of. And again, being the horrible American that I am, I'm like, is that true though? Were you really innocent in all of this?
I think I'm going to take it at face value that of course.
Well, given
within
the
this
movie,
film,
within the scope of this
America
movie,
can do no wrong.
Right, exactly. And if they were so to defend the movie again, because we do this, we do apologize for the movie from time to time. If this mysterious nation was in fact claiming that the 200 miles of airspace off their coast were theirs, when international law does in fact specify it as 12, then they are clearly in the wrong here.
But like that's some shit that North Korea would do.
Oh sure,
right?
I guess I can see that. I
think there are countries that are this like they don't give a fuck about what like the international community has established.
Yeah,
they just doing their own shit.
Yeah. So Master says, I didn't violate your airspace. I'm not a spy. This trial violates international law, which honestly it probably does, actually, given the way it's being held.
I think so. Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. So that part I was like, okay, that's true. The guy in charge, Colonel Nikesh. Everybody's a colonel in this movie.
Every motherfucker's a colonel.
Everyone's a colonel in this movie.
Like, did you not know other ranks?
Right.
Like, you know,
like, Colonel is spelled funny. I like Colonel. Let's just go with that. So Colonel Nikesh chuckles as he lights a cigarette. It is so it was so surreal watching Poirot like in this role. It was very weird for me. So Nikesh says that it's their country, it's their laws, and his American hubris is laughable. Okay.
It reminded me of I'm a big like The Onion guy.
Yeah, I love.
And they used to do like, the fake like the Weekend magazine, you know, just to cover or whatever.
Yeah.
And this reminded me of that one. It was like an aircraft carrier like plowing through the water, and it's like 101 reasons that America's hubris will never catch up to us. It's just like, I'm like, yes, I love that shit, man.
I do appreciate that even in 86, the concept of American hubris was alive and well.
Of course.
So Nikesh says that, look, I'm a pilot too, and, you know, I am always aware of what you know, where I am, like where I'm in the air. Like, yeah, that makes sense.
Fair.
Yeah, obviously.
I think Colonel Masters was aware of where he was.
Yeah, totally.
He wasn't
100%.
within your 12 miles.
Right, exactly. You went 12 miles, you claim 200. I'm sorry. Like, you know what? 200 miles is halfway to the middle of the Mediterranean.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You're getting in Greece's airspace.
Yeah, you're
at
like
that
flying
point.
over Sicily and just like, this is our airspace.
I was like, no, I'm sorry. That's not reasonable.
No.
Yeah. Anyway, so he said, we've warned America over and over about this, and reparations are due.
Sounds ominous.
Does sound slightly ominous. So the logical conclusion is cut to graduation day.
Yeah.
where Reggie is dancing with his girl in the school gymnasium. I mean, this is the classic like prom setup. Like
everyone's
this is
crowded around to watch in the high school gym or whatever.
Right. I mean, I don't know, maybe in the 80s this was a reality. I did graduate in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And that was definitely not a thing that people did at proms in the 90s. So I don't know. Maybe it was in the 80s. So
it reminded me kind of the Teen Wolf dance. They were doing it was just a strange dance.
It was a weird choreographed dance.
Fucking Reggie's wearing this wild tuxedo with tails.
I mean, and like, did he and his girl like
choreograph
this?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
were they rehearsing this?
I think so.
Okay.
Had to be, right?
I mean, what else? What other conclusion could you come to?
I mean, this is movie logic, but I still think, I'm assuming they actually did choreograph it.
The thing that I love, though, is that I love the idea that this is actually his girlfriend's idea, because it's the only way she can keep him interested in her. Like, well, it's like in that one musical that you and Tony used to go to all the time.
Guys and Dolls.
Guys and
you
Dolls.
Guys are big Guys and Dolls fan. Yeah, for sure.
And so, like, this is her attempt to get his attention away from Tony.
That was Seinfeld joke. It's Guys and Dolls. It's not Guys and Guys. Anyway.
There's a whole other movie with Reggie and Tony that never got made.
Absolutely. The sequel, the unofficial sequel.
The unofficial sequel. So they're tearing it up on the dance floor, though. Everybody is loving it. And it's like, I mean, it is footloose stuff. I mean, the dance moves are just ridiculous.
Yeah, he hit him with the moonwalk.
Any movie that's about like warplanes and all this stuff, but you need a dance choreographer, I feel like maybe you should be questioning whether or not that's the right way to go.
Yeah, man.
But anyway, it is a very complicated.
They did a hybrid
sequence.
of give me a John Hughes meets Red Dawn sort of shit.
It really was. Yeah. I mean, that is the elevator pitch is for Iron Eagle is.
What if the Breakfast Club?
Breakfast Club meets Red Dawn. So the song ends. Everybody erupts into cheering because they're so incredibly impressed with this. Reggie gives his date a very polite kiss.
Like a peck on the cheek.
It's just a peck on the cheek. And then immediately he's out with Tony.
Absolutely. They're like just in each other's arms. Like, it's very weird.
Very clear where the relationship actually is. So Milo shows up and he pulls Doug aside. And then it's like, hey, we got to go chat.
Milo's always the harbinger of bad news.
He is. And why did they keep him around? All he's got is bad news. So in the locker room, Milo tells Doug that the bad guys, they're still not asking for anything. The trial's already happened. They found Doug's dad guilty. And it's at this point where Tony and Reggie and Katie show up. Right.
Man, that Melora Hardin, Katie, was one attractive young woman.
Mm-hmm.
Still is, but yeah. Like I was stunned. She's a stunningly beautiful. Considering I never saw her in any other movies in this era.
Oh no, I didn't either.
I was watching all this shit.
Yeah. And how old was she around this time? Did you?
I mean, I bet she was probably about 20-ish. Right? Like she was probably age appropriate.
Yeah.
Because probably 20 years later she's playing Jan and she's probably 40s and that or whatever. Yeah.
But Miles says, like, look, he got found guilty, but we don't really know what that means because he hasn't been sentenced.
Right.
So it's like, okay, it's bad news, but, maybe we'll see.
Right. They still just like, maybe it's just still like gamesmanship
exactly,
or whatever.
Maybe it's still gamesmanship, right? So Milo continues and he says that the State Department thinks that they're trying to make an example of Doug's dad to show the world that they're not scared of the USA. Well, okay, yeah, the State Department's right. That's literally what was said in the previous scene.
Yeah, right.
you know, so Reggie wants to know when they're going to send the Marines in to get Doug's dad out of there. But Miles says nothing's being planned by the U.S., and they want to continue negotiations for the time being. Again, the amount of foreign policy conversations that happen in this movie were surprising. Like, I was not expecting this much international diplomacy to be brought up in a movie called Iron Eagle. So Doug figures out that in the best case scenario, his dad's going to be stuck there for years in jail.
Yeah, right.
And so the mood is not happy,
dude,
whatsoever.
I thought Doug's like formal hair looked like absolute shit. Like his regular like feathered look was very like trendy and still is kind of cool. Like his formal hair was just like a helmet of hair.
All I know, I'm a big hair guy. I love hair.
Okay.
Which, as someone who
Ironic.
is hairless, right? I always throughout the whole movie, Doug had way better hair than his girlfriend Katie. And I'm like, this is so weird. Doug spends more time getting ready in the morning than Katie does.
They made him real pretty.
They did. He's very, very pretty in this movie. Yeah. Anyway, it's an aside. It's a whole other conversation that's very weird. The next day, Doug's back on the base to see Colonel Blackburn again.
Yeah.
And so
this time he's like whisked into the restricted area with an escort.
Right, with an escort even. Yeah. And he says that they're doing all that they can to help his dad. And Doug says that, it's a good line, actually. He says, so I guess that means you're not doing anything at all.
Huh? Correct.
Yeah, no, you got it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You understand how the bureaucracy works.
You get it, son. Good job. You're going to have a career in the Air Force. Blackburn says that they're still trying to talk to the bad guys and work something out, but no military action is planned, right? And so Doug walks away, pissed off, like just absolutely defeated, but not defeated, because he's not going to rest on his laurel. So he heads over to, just to sort of blow off some steam, he heads over to the mandatory simulator training area. I love that it actually says simulator training on the sign.
Now, I think we've jumped to Israel now.
Okay.
Like for this exterior and this bit coming up.
Yeah.
Apparently, I'm not a big car guy.
Yeah.
But trivia online was saying that Doug drives two different Mustangs that for car guys are very distinguishably different cars.
Interesting.
And I feel like one was like the California scenes Mustang, and then the other one was like the Israeli scene Mustangs. It's the closest match they could get, but they're not identical. Like someone said, they're definitely different model years. Like, details about them are very different. Like the grill is different and this and that. And I'm like, okay. To a guy who doesn't really know cars, I'm like, I never noticed that.
There's another scene later on where they call something that it's not, and it made me laugh out loud. And we'll get to that later on.
Okay.
So it doesn't surprise me that the movie is playing fast and loose with continuity in these ways. So he walks into the training facility, and the guy who is running the facility says that his deepest sympathies for what's happening to Doug's dad. And Doug asks if he can, look, could I slip into one of the simulators? I'm going to use father's been committed of international crimes privilege. And the guy says, though, well, yeah, the guy who's got time booked on the thing is running late, so hop on in, which is that really what would happen?
Of course not.
So, but he says, Doug, just keep cool about this. This isn't the same thing as sneaking you in at night.
What the fuck does that mean?
Which, yes, exactly. And it contradicts earlier in the movie where he talks about he's skipping classes to go do this. And I'm like, all right, movie, come on.
I'm so confused. I don't know what that be cool about this. This is well, does that mean don't get crazy in the simulator?
They do, yeah.
There's a dozen people milling around that see that you're letting this high schooler climb in the simulator. I don't know what he's going to do in there that's going to be out of line.
I know. It's so weird. Anyway,
it's not a real plane. You're not going to fucking break it.
How are you going to break it? I would love to see you do this. So Doug climbs into the simulator and he straps on his tape deck harness, which I noticed in this was a scene where I noticed he's carrying it around everywhere he goes.
He goes nowhere without
the movies. This is where it's okay, The whole sneaking you in at night line is weirdly continuity breaking, but then the movie is obsessively accurate about him carrying that tape
This
deck
dude
around
loves his
everywhere.
music, man.
Yeah. So the guy running the simulator queues up an exercise against several MiGs, and Doug cranks up One Vision by Queen on his tape deck. Again, the soundtrack of this movie is just hammering home.
Did you like this song?
I like this song.
I liked the opening riff. I loved the orchestral bit of it.
Yeah.
But it's a little like weird. It's just it ends with the lyric like, "Gimme, gimme, gimme hot chicken." Fucking what?
Well, okay.
What is that? What is that? I don't know. But Queen made some weird. They were doing some weird soundtrack
some
stuff in the
weird stuff.
80s.
Yeah.
They had the Flash Gordon.
They
shit
did the
and
entire soundtrack for Highlander.
Yeah, they were doing some weird shit in the 80s. Man. Cocaine.
Come on, man. The Highlander soundtrack is
Absolutely. It's just
fucking great.
It's just weird choices by a band that is like a globally big band.
This is what you get when your lead guitarist is a PhD astrophysicist. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
shit.
That's just what
Okay.
happens. Yeah. Brian May is a
I didn't know
PhD
that.
astrophysicist. Yeah.
I saw they had a song from Highlander. I think it was like the Do You Want to Live Forever. It was one of those the ballady songs.
Yeah.
And like Brian May wrote that song while he was inspired by watching like his wife, who was an actress in Highlander, do like love scenes with Lambert. Inspired. I'm like, ugh.
That's a little weird.
You're sitting around watching
That's
the scenes.
super weird.
I should write this inspires me to write a song.
I will admit I wasn't listening to the lyrics of One Vision. I just like
It has a
Queen,
killer riff
it's
and
got
everything.
A great
Yeah.
riff and yeah. So I did not hear that last line of that song.
Gimme hot chicken. What is that even? In what
don't-
context would that make sense?
If we were
Freddie
Mercury,
Mercury.
he's well, I'm sure it has something to do with sex because it always does. So Doug starts just murdering all of these MiGs in the sky.
Yeah.
With they did like a weird footage filter
Yeah.
over shots that we had seen earlier in the movie.
It kind of reminded me of like old, projection TVs back in the
Right.
day where I'm like, that's what it looked like. It must be being projected like that. I get the impression this is what Doug can actually see. Like they have a screen in front of them and they're projecting footage of planes.
But this raised a question for me. What did a simulator look like in 1986?
Maybe it was like that. I don't know.
Yeah, so
I'm
I
gonna
have no
assume
idea.
this movie is like spot on. They were
do
probably
that.
on the Israeli military base or whatever.
Yeah, maybe
they were like,
did
yeah, you
show
can
what
like
a
get some.
simulator is.
I don't know.
And we hear a new voice on the radio and more like a much harder
Who
simulation
could it be?
begins. Yeah, what is this voice? Yeah, that's right. So Doug shoots down a couple of the enemies, and the mystery voice does give him praise about this, but very quickly he's shot down and it ends his simulation. And this was the point where I thought that the little LCD ticker got a little bit sassy.
What did it
It was
say?
like, you crashed. It was like, simulation has ended. And I'm like, all
Fuck
right,
you.
yeah, I feel like you didn't need to. I saw that. I did notice that I crashed. Thank you very much.
Right.
And it made me wonder, like, is that what it plays when an actual plane crashes?
Game over.
It was just such a weird thing. But again, that weird LCD ticker thing on the plane, I can't imagine how that would be useful for anybody.
No, I can't. Yeah.
So Doug's in disbelief about having crashed his plane, and he complains as he hops out of the simulator. That's when he finds Chappie. Oh, Chappie's back in the movie.
Right. They previously we just seen him as seemed like he was the mechanic.
Just a generic
at the
mechanic.
airstrip. Yeah.
Right, working on someone else's plane without any permission to do so. But he's actually in a flight suit, though.
Mhm.
Like, oh, things are different now. Chappie tells him that all of his fancy flying is useless if he doesn't stay aware of his surroundings. And Chappie tells him that you need to pay more attention to your instruments and less attention to your music.
Oh, classic dad line.
Yeah, straight up. A dad joke mixed with disapproval with a touch of advice just sprinkled in for the end.
Yeah.
So the guy who runs the simulator returns. He addresses Chappie as Colonel and says, like, hey, I'm sorry, man, but your time in the simulator's all been used up by this random kid that I gave it to.
Chappie was late.
Yeah,
I'm gonna blame Chappie.
All right. So Chappie says he'll be back next week and leaves, but he gives Doug a great stare down before he leaves.
Yeah, what was that moment for
I
you?
have no idea. I didn't know what was going on.
I kind of took it as like that's you're damn right I'm a colonel, or you didn't know that, did you? Like that I'm a fucking like
Maybe he was. Maybe
I
it
don't
was
know.
a bit of a.
That's what I read into it because he kind of like gave him a stare down, like that's right.
Yeah, maybe he like stepped up to him. Like this is a step up. Yeah, represent.
Yeah, I'm not a fucking mechanic.
Right, exactly.
Like
you assumed that I was just some weird interloper fucking with your engine when you didn't want me to. But no, man, I actually matter. So the simulator guy tells Doug, like, hey, look, just keep your chin up. At which point, like, Doug goes chasing after Chappie. So outside on the tarmac, Doug catches up with him, and this is where we actually learn who he truly is.
Right.
Air Force Reserve Colonel Charles Chappie Sinclair.
Who is based on a real life person.
Yeah, that's what I read. Yeah.
This dude, his nickname was Chappie. He was an Air Force general.
Yeah.
But he had been like a fucking Tuskegee airman and flew all the way up through the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Amazing. Like, this was a scene definitely that was in Israel.
Yeah.
Because, like, when there's real F-16s around, like, I know that was all that shit was with the collaboration or the cooperation of the Israeli military.
And the reason why the movie went with Israel is the Air Force was originally tapped to support them on the film, but then when their representative saw the script and saw that it involved what happens later, they're like, we do not even want to remotely imply.
We may have to talk about that some more later.
Yeah,
when
we will get to it. We will get to it. And so so they went out to Israel. That's where they got the planes, and that's how they got all the footage. It's none of those are actually American planes flying. Anyway, so Doug's like, well, if you're this like bigwig colonel, why are you moonlighting as a mechanic? And Chappie says, well, because I like fixing planes, which seems
fair.
That's fair. So Chappie claps Doug on the shoulder and says, hey, your dad's strong. He's going to be okay. And then Doug asks Chappie if he knows his dad, and Chappie says he knows the type, and that's the most important thing to know. And I'm like, okay, what?
Is that true?
Is that true? Do you know him or not, sir? It's a simple yes or no question.
I do feel like this is the scene though where Louis Gossett Jr. like really earned that paycheck.
Yeah.
Like this was a great scene for him. This whole like just gruff answers and he's just got a great bearing about him of like authority.
Yeah, I agree, and he does. Like this is the point where you get to really know who the character is, like what he's going to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How he's going to play. He clearly is going to be the mentor character, and
of course he's the Mr. Miyagi.
Straight up. Yeah. So Doug says that it's bullshit that no one has the balls to force his father's release, and Chappie says like, what do you think the U.S. should be doing? Starting a war over it? I'm like, yes, movie. That is the question I was asking too. Thank you for addressing it. And Doug says no, but like, look, the bad guys are a shitty little country.
Quotes. Shitty little country.
Shitty little country. The direct quote. And going in there and getting his dad by force should be easy. It's like, you're going to vote for Trump then?
Like, they're a shithole.
Yeah, exactly. Like, whoa, okay. So Chappie, though, he adds that he's been a ton of rescue missions along the lines of what Doug is talking about. And usually they lose more lives than they save, and negotiating it is his dad's best choice.
It's probably actually correct for one human being. Like, best case scenario, you're going to save one guy. Worst case scenario, you're going to lose a lot more.
Right.
Like, he probably is actually, I could see if it was 100 people, like maybe you're like, yeah, we should, it's worth maybe. But yeah, for one person,
Agreed.
Chappie's probably correct. The negotiation is probably the better bet to get him back.
Yeah. Once again, the amount of time this movie spends on international diplomacy really surprised me.
It's true.
But Doug follows up and says, hey, if we had the right plan, wouldn't a rescue mission be pretty simple? And Chappie says it definitely wouldn't be simple, but it would be possible. And so then Doug follows up and says, well, could you plan the mission? And Chappie goes, probably. At which point, well, what would it take? Says Doug, innocently enough. And then Chappie goes, it'd take a hell of a lot more than what you got, kid. Like, all right.
These two had good chemistry.
They did.
Like
they worked. They
were
played
great together.
I mean, the chemistry between the actors were all really strong.
Well, the whole movie I feel like was very well cast.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, it wasn't like the biggest name actors or whatever.
Right.
But it was the right actors, and they like actors who worked great together.
Yeah, there was no one stood out like a sore thumb. Like, you don't belong here, right?
Yeah.
Everybody played their role exactly as it needed to be played. Anyway, so Doug asks if Chappie thinks that one pilot in a fully loaded F-16 could pull it off. and Chappie tells Doug that he should stop daydreaming about this because the Air Force isn't going to do anything. Just not happening.
Mm-hmm.
So Doug says that they might do a whole lot more than Chappie thinks. They just won't know it. And I'm like, okay. Chappie's confused by this. So Doug explains that he's got the whole goddamn base wired.
Uh-huh.
Like, literally, do you think that he...
I don't think it... I think it just means like fucking Ferris Bueller style.
Yeah, like everybody's working for him in
Like
a way.
I got all the angles figured out.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. That's what I get from that.
And so he follows up by saying, like, look, I can get you anything that you need from intelligence all the way up to a fully armed F-16, which blows my mind.
Yes, that is... I'm with you.
Yeah. So then Chappie says, well, then can you get me a couple of pilots? And Doug says, I can get you one. Obviously referencing himself, in my opinion. Of
course.
That's the way I took it.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
So Chappie appreciates Doug's courage, but tells him, like, look, you need to let go of these crazy ideas. So Chappie tries to walk away again, and then Doug pursues him. He is starting to get incensed. Like,
The way they had blocked this scene is very repetitive. Like, it was...
Yeah.
How many times does Doug catch up with Chappie?
Yeah.
They talk a little bit. Chappie walks on, and then Doug catches up with him again, and they talk a little bit more. Like, I mean, it happens like 3 or 4 times.
So Chappie tries to walk away again. Doug pursues him, and he says, look, flying a mission... Chappie says flying a mission like this is a lot different than flying the Snake.
Yeah.
And Doug says to Chappie that, look, I've got more time in the simulator than any of the pilots on this base, and I bet none of them have seen real combat either. And they're just a couple of years older than him.
Right.
All of those are facts. There's actually, like, almost no military
I
aircraft.
mean, when does the last time we had like an air-to-air conflict?
Exactly. It's like, oh, that movie, and this is where this movie like drives me crazy because sometimes it's so fanciful and ridiculous, and then other times it's like, do you actually know what you're talking about? Because some of the things that you're saying are true. Like, was it an accident or what? I don't know. It totally confused me. So Chappie has heard enough by this point, and he says, look, I'm late for my flight time. You fucked up my simulator time. I'm not going to lose my actual flight time.
Right.
So Doug begs Chappie to take him along with him, and it's like, look, I will show you what I can really do in an F-16.
Uh-huh.
And he says, Doug says, my dad took me up all the time, but Chappie waves him off dismissively. Like, I don't give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
At which point, Doug finally loses any pretense to civility, yells at Chappie that he obviously doesn't give a shit about my dad either. Now, at this point, I'm thinking, like, well, yeah, he just said, I don't know your dad. I just know the type.
Right.
Later on, in a little bit, we find out is not
I mean,
true.
they've met before. I guess maybe like I don't like no, we don't hang out, but I
Right.
met him.
Right.
I know the type of man he is.
So
I don't know.
Anyway, I don't know.
I'll forgive it.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's a good scene for the most part.
It really is.
But anyway, so accusing Chappie that he doesn't give a shit about his dad, that's a bridge too far. So Chappie is fucking pissed at this point. And Luke, and you believe it. Like,
Oh yeah.
he does it. Luke Gossett Jr. does a good
He
job.
cranked it up.
He really does. He takes it up to the next level. He takes it, switches it into Academy Award winner mode. And he says, do you really believe that nonsense you're saying? Look at me when I talk to you. I'm like, oh shit. I looked at him when he said that line.
Uh-huh.
He said that Chappie says that he served this country for 22 years, and every time someone dies for this country, believe me, boy, I give a shit.
Yeah, he was killing it.
It
man.
was great.
Killing it.
It was great. So he says he's never let anybody talk to him the way that Doug just did, and he's not going to start letting people do that now. Doug is fucking crushed. Like, he knows he's been bested at this point. Yeah.
How old do you think Chappie is? How old's Chappie supposed to be?
I assume that he was in his 40s.
Really?
Like, that's
okay.
the headspace that
in
I
my
was
mind, I thought he was like probably 55. Or
Really?
something like that.
Interesting. Okay.
But he says the thing about 22 years, and I'm like, well, that math is weird. Unless he's talking about before he retired, he did 22 years.
Yeah.
But if you're right, if he was like mid 40s, then it'd be like, oh yeah, maybe 22 to
like
44.
yeah,
something
yeah,
like
exactly.
That.
And he's
But I thought he was like 55, and I'm like, so did you enlist at 30 something? I don't know. I got confused, but maybe you're right.
I don't know
how
40s
old-
is where I pegged him in.
Okay.
Yeah, but the movie does play fast and loose with everything from geography to time. So Chappie tells him, look, if you really want to help your dad, you're going to just stay here and you're going to be strong for your family.
Right.
And Doug, like he's been bested at this point. Like it's the classic sort of, I know I'm wrong. And it's one of those situations where people don't apologize when they know that they're wrong and they just walk away.
Yeah.
And that's exactly
now
what
is not
Doug
the
does.
time.
Now is not the time.
I gotta cool off.
Right. And so Chappie steps into his F-16 and the scene ends.
That was great work from Louis Gossett Jr.
It
Too
was a
good for
strong
this
scene.
movie.
Oh my God.
I feel like,
But again, I mean, he's like a phenomenal actor. And the kid who plays Doug, this has got to be like one of his first movies, right?
Had to be.
Yeah.
Right? He's 20. I mean, he had
Still
to.
cutting
He's
his
probably done a
teeth.
few teeny movies before this or whatever.
Yeah,
but
exactly. It's like, what must it have been like? Like, I am in a scene right now where it's just me and an Academy Award winner talking. I mean, that's got to be
great
intimidating.
scenes, too.
Yeah.
They were excellent together.
Again, like you said, all of the actors had strong chemistry with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, later at graduation, everybody is on hand to watch. They're sitting there, Doug's family, Katie's family, but Doug is a million miles away.
Right.
The valedictorian stands up to make his speech, and after 3 lines, Doug drifts away.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yes, everybody does that with a valedictorian speech.
Ugh.
No one gives a flying
This
fuck.
speech sucked, too.
It was so bad. Anyway, so we flash back. And I remember watching this going, I wonder if they put this flashback in the movie because they haven't had any shots of airplanes flying around in a while. Because they've been grounded for a long time in this movie. Anyway, so it's Doug and his dad, and they're in an F-16, and Doug's dad is letting him fly the plane. So Doug, as always, has got his tape deck cranked to max, and now he's playing Road of the Gypsy by Adrenaline. Once again, which is a go-to. And he's doing all kinds of crazy-ass barrel rolls and loops, which no one would let you do. Like, that kind of show, no one would let you do that.
The process shots they did, the rear projection shit looked kind of shitty.
It was so bad. It was so bad.
A lot of continuity errors, too, where it'd be they're flying high, but then it seems like the backgrounds are real low and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. There is a lot of continuity issues when it comes to, over the course of the movie, when it comes to when they're inside the cockpits, when they're outside I mean, it's all over the place. So they finish off their maneuvers, they land on the tarmac, and one of the other pilots is like, what were all those acrobatics about? Right, because you're not supposed to do that kind of shit. It's a natural question to ask. Colonel Masters says that he was having an issue with his throttle and was trying to work it out.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure out how a barrel roll solves that problem, but all right. The pilot also says hey, dude, I feel like I heard some music over the what was the line? It was something like I think at one point my radio malfunctioned and I started picking up random
like that.
radio waves.
I got the impression that pilot knew damn well what was happening, but I think Doug's dad is his superior officer, so he can't really say anything.
It's it must have been interference.
Yeah.
But it was sort of dude, I know what you're doing up there. You got to fucking stop this shit, right? So the pilot strolls off, and then Doug's dad lays into Doug for his hotshot flying, which is he should have. I mean, he shouldn't have been letting him do it in the first place, but whatever.
Yeah.
So Doug says it won't happen again. His dad's like, damn right it won't, because I'm not taking you up anymore. And Doug's like, oh, come on, Dad. And then Ted goes, don't come on, Dad, me.
No. He said, don't come on me, Dad.
Oh, he did?
And it was like a weird flub.
Don't come on me,
Don't come on me, Dad. And I'm like, I like a good line flub, though. In movies, sometimes I feel like when they let that shit stay in the movie, I feel like it makes it almost feel more real sometimes.
Oh, wow.
It reminded me of just other good ones, like the Boogie Nights thing, where he's like, my fucking wife has an ass in her cock in the driveway. It's that is not scripted, but I think it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so much better than the way it was scripted. There was the my other favorite one is in Pulp Fiction, where he's like, Antoine should have fucking known better. And I'm just like, yes, it's so much cooler. Don't come on me, Dad.
This is a bit of an aside, but we're going to go down this road for a minute. This is why AI will never be able to replace true art, because it will never be able to replicate these weird flubs that end up being better than the written
idiosyncratic
line. The idiosyncrasies of being a human being.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyway, so back to Iron Eagle. So Doug says that, look, you're graduating next month and you need to start showing a little bit of responsibility so that when I'm deployed,
Right.
I know that you can be the man of the house. It comes back to this theme that Doug's kind of a bit of a fuck up, actually.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
That also sets a timetable, right,
It
for the thing,
does.
because he's like, okay, so he's saying graduation's in a month.
Yeah.
So this has happened. Something happened about a month ago.
yeah, exactly. So now Doug starts like playing like he's a good soldier, right? Like,
Right.
really respectful. Is understood, sir. May I ask the colonel a question, sir? And Doug then asks, he's like, did you like my fancy maneuvers? And Ted goes, yeah. I mean, he's impressed. Like, he's not going to deny it. And he goes like, now get out of here. The colonel's wife thinks you're at school.
I like that
whoa,
line.
okay.
I like that line. Also, we got to blame then Colonel Masters for like Doug's delinquency.
Yeah.
You let him cut class.
You let him cut
to fly the
class.
F-16s.
Right. And so it actually paints I had to go to the simulator line in a different light. What if his dad was like, the only time I can get you into the simulator is if you cut school at this time?
Absolutely. You got to do it.
All of a sudden, Doug, it is a necessity for Doug at that point, right?
Uh-huh.
So his dad is clearly a fucking enabler. So anyway.
I love that. I learned it from watching you, Dad.
Yeah, I learned it from you, Dad. So we come back to graduation, and the valedictorian is still talking.
He's still going on.
Oh, my God, he's still going. And he says that it's time for them all to stop being children, start taking control over their own lives. And then, of course, this resonates with Doug because like, he's right on this cusp anyway.
Like, it wasn't until I was rewatching it for the 100th time, like with the fine-tooth comb.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess what he's saying does kind of like strike a chord with Doug.
I have a note in my notes was like, the only time a valedictorian speech has ever impacted anybody.
that shit was terrible. And that actor had no charisma.
None whatsoever. But what did he not have any charisma, or was he playing the part perfectly?
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Anyway, so after graduation, the whole family, well, minus Doug's dad, is walking back to the car. And his mom seems like she's in a daze. And there was like a brief moment earlier, too, where she seemed like she was a little out of it, too.
Yeah.
Again, really underserved character. Like
she was doing good work.
Yeah, she was doing good work. So Doug asked what's wrong, and she didn't want to tell him before the graduation, but she has heard that they're going to hang Ted in 3 days.
Crazy shit.
Like crazy shit. Now we've got the ticking clock, right? Classic. We know what our time frame is. We got 3 days left. They all hug. Everybody's crying. Then back at the home, Doug's brother is in his room crying. Doug comes in and says, "Look, I think I know a way that we can rescue Dad." At which point, Doug tells his brother, "Like, look, get all the Eagles together. Let's get together at the clubhouse at 7 a.m." So, brother, like, he disappears. He's off to go do his thing. At which point, Doug starts pulling out all this research material, planes, maps, atlases, the whole thing.
Yeah, right.
It's
the plot thickens.
Shit's getting real, son.
Absolutely.
Shit's getting real. And I think that's where we're going to end
Let's
it for
put a
part
pin
two.
in it. I need to freshen up my drink here.
That's true. And I got a little bit left on the soju, but I might need a refresher at some point. So
absolutely, man. It's been a pleasure.
It's things are happening now. Like we're getting to it.
Thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah,
as always,
and we'll be back.